It is so cold.
I think it's just, you think in this room the heat would go up because it's a tall ceiling.
You think we could take money in it?
Yeah. What'd you say? Yeah, May I please have a motion to return to open session? Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Miranda, are we recording? Are we recording? Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay. Motion carried. 6:01 p.m. Board will now move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. We will begin with Dr. Dearman's superintendent's report. Dr. Dearman.
Microphone is on. Yes. Okay. Mr. McKenzie fulfilled the one remaining FOIA from the July 17th meeting, and there have been no other FOIA requests since. Just some general information. We're back, and enrollment, 4,715 students as of today. Banner is full at 4th grade. Hickory Grove is full at 1st grade, with 1 seat left in kindergarten, 3rd, and 5th grades. Wilder Wade is full at 2nd, 4th, and 5th grades. But the good news is, Dr. Andrews, provided us some estimates for Dunlap Middle, Dunlap Valley, and Dunlap High School, and plus or minus a handful of students, they were spot on. So well done, Dr. Andrews. Opening Institute, we had Devin Hughes, who is a speaker that is part of the Orange Frog group. It's about positive mindset, and that's how we kicked off our year. We hosted that for Peoria County. The ROE paid for that speaker to come in. We agreed to host. We had several other schools come join us in our auditorium, so it was pretty much completely full. And then we streamed that to other Peoria County schools and Tazewell County schools. So that they could watch that presentation, and it is available on our YouTube channel if you want to see it yourself. We recognized 7 retirees, and then also recognized members who have had 5+ years of service with our district, the 10 years, all those different service pins that we do. And then we have 2 members of my team that we recognize that are retiring, one of which is here tonight, Dr. Adrian, and the other is Greg Fairchild. So this will be their last year. The new parking lot is open and striped and obviously in use. I'll give Mrs. Caslick credit. She is not here because it's the Mid-Illini banquet dinner tonight, so her and Mr. Holmes are attending that. But it has made a big difference. I've been doing opening traffic flow duty for 7 years now, and this was by far the smoothest it has gone. And it's second day now, so there's some still ironing out to do. There's always bumps in the road. But on the first day, our last bus, regular ed bus, rolled in at 8:15, which is about 15 minutes earlier than it normally does on day one. But we will get that tweaked and get that worked out, but it does seem to be working quite well. We didn't have the huge backups like we normally do. For instance, I came through there at 8:05 this morning, came up to the stop sign across from Casey's. There wasn't a single car in line, turned right onto Legion Hall, and there was cars backed up just about where you turn into the new lot. That was it, which that's amazing because that's the busiest time. So it is making an impact. So kudos to Katie. That was her plan on where to put the kids, and it seems to be working at this point. Really? What isn't working, we're having some trouble with bus drivers. Again, not trouble with them personally, but just manpower. We're short about 6 drivers. We got it posted on LinkedIn, our website. We're doing everything we can, but we have no sub drivers. Drew, our transportation director, is actually subbing and filling in herself just because we need help. So if you know of anyone looking for any type of work, you can work as much as you want right now because we are desperate for people. Let us know, we'll get that worked out for you. So please reach out to people if you can and refer them our way. And then lastly, I am in the process of finishing up the RFQ, request for qualifications for Wilder Weight. So that process, as we were talking about last month, is moving forward with finding us an architect to help design the new Wilder Weight. So that's exciting news as well. And that is all I've got, Dr. Humbles.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman. At this time, we'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? If so, please raise your hand. All right, seeing none. This concludes the public participation portion of the meeting, and the board will now move on to the reorganization. We'll now move on to information discussion items. Yes, okay. Dr. Dearman will discuss the board member vacancy and the process to fill that vacancy.
Just in a quick nutshell, we had the resignation of board member Linda Smith. With that, the board has several options, but the general practice of this board has been to accept resumes or applications for those that are interested, conduct an interview process, and then select a candidate out of that interview process. The timeline that was used, I won't insult anybody's intelligence, you can read that for yourself, was followed as stated there, and then the new person will be appointed this evening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dearman. Is there any discussion? The school activity account reports are included in the board packet. Is there any discussion? Next, Mr. McKenzie will give a presentation of the fiscal year 2025 budget. Mr. McKenzie.
In your package, barring a couple of changes, minor changes I've made to one of the slides, but this is just an overview of the process and where we stand as of today, where I think we stand. When we adopt the budget, we have to do a public notice, which we'll get the paper, work on getting the paper this week. It has to be on display for 30 days. So starting tomorrow, I'll have it in the office and on the website and everything so we can have it on display. I have a hard copy in the office if anybody wants it. I have the PDF I'll have the PDF on our website. After that 30 days, you have the public hearing and approve the things. So on September 25th, we'll have a public hearing to start our normal board meeting. And then we'll have the adoption of, we'll ask the board to adopt the budget on that September 25th board meeting. I have listed here the total revenue and total expenditures. I didn't have that on the one I gave to Miranda on Friday. I didn't realize I'd not circle back and fill that in. And those numbers I have in there are numbers without transfers and borrowings that are, a little bit more apples to apples.
Is that 68, is that the right number for expenditures? What you sent me was 63, that's quite a bit of a difference there.
Let me look more about it. I made a typo. I just added this afternoon, without borrowing. Yes, 63, 448.
Okay, because that was,
I don't know what I did.
okay,
It's actually 63,443,028.
Right.
That's
No, I was gonna say that has the training center.
Yeah, so that's I don't know what, I was just doing this afternoon right before I came to the meeting, so somehow I looked at a wrong number. So, anyways, that's, again, the right number for the listening public is 63,443,028 total expenditures. Without borrowings, the numbers I show you next will have borrowings and transfers mixed in. So, as as usual, fund accounting, cash basis fund accounting is what we use as a school district, so it's sometimes confusing to me and everybody else that's used to accrual-based business accounting. There's differences. And this will show a lot big differences because in a for-profit business, you would show your borrowing as a liability and just cash. It'd all be on your income or your balance sheets. But in school cash basis accounting, that borrowing shows as revenue. And then when we build a building or do any capital improvements, again, in a business, you just show that on your balance sheet as an asset. You reduce cash, you increase capital capital improvements, and then you would depreciate it over time. That's when it would show up on your income statement. But in a school district, it immediately shows up on your income statement. So that's makes comparison from year to year very difficult sometimes without thinking all that through. So
I'll second that it's very difficult, but has anybody ever talked about that and to change this? This is just so.
in bigger school districts, they do what they call industry-wide. They do a conversion from cash basis to accrual basis, and do a conversion to put it into what you and they depreciate.
So what do you mean by bigger schools? Are we a bigger school that would qualify, or do we have that option?
Peoria does it. They've got 12,000 students, but like Unit 5 and Normal, which has got 14,000 students, they don't do it. So I mean, there's no hard and fast rule of who does it.
So should we talk about doing that sometime, or is anybody interested in that?
We don't right now because we simply don't have the staff. I mean, that was a big part of my job when I was at Peoria, was doing all that safety testing.
regulated, you could do it.
So we could, but in the future we can talk about that, but it doesn't, we don't do it currently. So, and that's, even there, they still budget based on cash basis accounting, but then they, in their financial statements that they issue in December, usually they do all the conversions to a real business kind of balance.
I'll have to learn more. Okay.
So we can talk about it. I know, usually it's only the bigger school districts that have more administrative staff that do that. All right, big changes this time, for, a couple of them I put down here. Evidence-based funding, that's state, what used to be called general state aid, is increasing $530,000. Just as a reference, I looked it up, but we're considered a tier 1 school district in Illinois, which means we have under like 70% of the what the state considers a well-funded school district would have. So we're the lowest ranking in that. Now our average cost per students is also very low, and a lot of that is because we don't get a lot of federal funds, we don't have the poverty and everything else that some school districts. Morton, as an example, is 87%. We're right at 70%. So we're a tier 1 school. So we get a little bit more in evidence-based funding than we would if we were a tier 2 school. So that's a positive right now. Corporate personal property replacement taxes, the number has not come out from the state yet. I looked right before this meeting to see if they posted it yet. Usually they do it sometime in the middle of August. I estimated a $293,000 decrease, which is 17% decrease. As a reference, I'm budgeting just under 1.4 million this year. 2 years ago, we got 2.5 million. That number has really come down after it spiked after the pandemic, when there was so much government funding out there and everything, and it's been really decreasing the last couple of years. But again, we get 1.4 million, we got 2.57 in 2023. So, but the state has not given us an estimate, but everybody out there is thinking it's going to decrease. So I budgeted 17% less than we had this year. I also put in the budget, assuming we're going to have another decent EAD increase of 5%. And of course, the big thing is good and bad. We've increased employee wages substantially in the last 4 or 5 years. and that's the economy base, it's the minimum wage increasing, it's a number of things, but, our employee, pay increases are part of this, all a part of this budget, so. So here's the, operating side of the budget. The biggest concern long-term in my mind, I've said this before, is the bottom line of the education fund, which is, 2.779 million in the negative. We're spending more than we're receiving. At this point, it's really not possible to change what we're gonna spend this year. If we were to eliminate anything big, we would have to do that before, like, the March time for teachers, March of the year. Obviously you could certainly, but you certainly couldn't eliminate teacher positions and stuff at this point of the school year because, of state law. I did, as an example, I was like, well, what if we just got rid of all supplies and materials? It's $1.88 billion in that line. But I looked last year and we put $2.2 million in supplies and materials at the end of the year. What's the budget? I'm looking at,
That's right,
I think
it was 2.2.
I think it was 2.2. Anyway, of that 2.2, $900,000 of that was food for our kitchens. Obviously, you're not getting rid of that. A lot of that's self-funded anyway. It's in the revenue. For most of that self-funded just by fees or federal aid for creative lunch. And then, like, grants of that 2.2, 645,000 was grants. Well, again, those are funded by a direct revenue, so even if you cut them, you would cut the revenue too. So that leaves about $700,000 that's books and technology upgrades, athletics, things like that. Paper, it's not a big number. So anyways, I've like looked at all these numbers a million times over the summer. So this is where I obviously, as usual, I hope that we can, Dr. Dearman and I have tried to warn everybody that the answer is going to be no. We had an administrator meeting last week and I told them, the answer is going to be no this year. We're not going to be able to do things, the default answer is going to be no on everything. So, but that being said, there's certain things we have to do to have a high quality education experience for our kids. So that's the biggest concern on this. Transportation, I don't know if I showed this, but some of the funds transfers, but it's weird because I'm transferring out of transportation. You have to transfer it to the ed fund, and then out of the ed fund to the capital projects fund. So that's why the ed fund has an in and out. And then $7 million I'm transferring out of working cash to get the $8.5 million for the new training facility. That is why that is $10 million in the funds transfers as part of expenditures instead of the 8.5 that we saw. It's like a revenue portion of the education fund.
So can I ask, how did you pick those numbers? How did you pick 7?
Because one working cash fund, it's so at least $2 million of it has to come from that, or because we just issued those bonds to do capital projects, like, or not has to, but it's a valid expenditure for it. And then it just using those funds and spending down the funds that people can afford it better than like the education fund. It doesn't have to be. We'll have to do a official funds transfer resolution at a later board meeting. I figured we wouldn't do that until we needed the money for the construction, the official later in the year, and we can discuss. But basically, if you look at the very bottom line, at the end of this year, I expect the fund balance in education to be $28 million, transportation with the transfer out, you know, it's gonna go down to 6,175,000. I mean, transportation without that $1.5 million only has about $3 million a year in expenditures. So, and we have a $6 million fund balance in there. That's why I decided to take some of it out of that fund, and the rest I took out of capital project. But again, we can have that discussion and make a final decision about that. This is my proposal. So, and then this is the non-operating side. I separate them like always because these funds are very restricted on what you can spend the money for, and you levy for very specific things, and you can only spend money on very specific things. The one highlight is in capital projects where I'm transferring $500,000, and then we'll be doing a bond issuance or debt certificate issuance for $35 million. So you see those as revenue and capital projects. We're paying for this parking lot out here out of capital projects. That's 300 and some. $5 million is what I'm estimating we might spend on building between the athletic complex and Wild and Wave. Complete wild guess. We'll just have a number in there of what we might spend on cheaper. It's probably a little high. We'll spend what we need to spend based on when the bids are done and they start construction and everything. Sometimes when you build a school, there's some front-loaded costs. You've got to order air conditioners and steel and all this stuff. So that's why I put it in $5 million. I've not ever built a whole school, but I have been involved in building some pretty big additions to schools. And so then that leaves us a revenue over expenditures of that almost $28 million in that last column. Without borrowings and everything, it would be a negative $2 million in that number, which is more than apples and apples to last year. So, and last year, after everything, with the borrowing for working cash, we had a positive $1 million change in that number. Again, like I said, the next steps will be we're going to post it on, get this posted, and then we'll have the public hearing and ask for board approval on September 25th. Those are the next steps. And then, any questions?
I have a question. Our EAD went up by 5%, right?
They went up by.
Or your assumption was 5?
Yeah, I'm budgeting 5% for this next year. Yeah.
Okay.
Which may be, I mean, I talked to the county and they don't know yet, but yeah.
So year over year, if I look year over year, it's about a little over 2.5% increase in revenue. How does that help me understand?
Part of it is timing. Last year, we normally get around 47 and point something percent of the property taxes in June, and this year we got 49% in June, so we got slightly more in last year's final numbers than we're getting in this year, so it skews that a little bit. That's the only explanation I have for that. It's just I went in the budget. I still have the 47 point or 48% or whatever it is, whereas in last year's actual June we got 49% for some reason, which is the highest it's been since I've been here. So I don't know why people paid their property taxes earlier than normal this year. I'm all for it. I highly encourage everybody to pay their property taxes.
Yes, please.
I'm sure everyone on this board does. Capital outlay and expenditures of the education fund, what is that? It's going from about $350,000 to $1.3 million.
A lot, I don't have that right in front of me, but a lot of it is Chromebooks, about 300 and some thousand, 360 or something. Kevin gave me an estimate, is Chromebooks. And then there's some other technology stuff, and there's some I think there's some ESSER, grant funded things that they're doing out of that, out of capital projects also. I
Okay,
can
I
get
just-
you those
that's
exact
fine.
numbers, but a lot of it's technology and grant related. So that's one of our other problems as a school district during the COVID funding or whatever you want to call it. They officially call it ESSER. Matt would have to tell me the official, why it's called ESSER. I don't remember the words that go with that acronym right off the top of my head. But we were getting a lot of federal funds, more federal funds than normal. Well, that's over at the end of this month. We have to spend all the money by the end of October, or end of August of this year. And so the last couple of years, we bought Chromebooks and things like that out of those funds rather than district funds. This year, we have to go back to using just district funds because those things that we were able to use grants in the past. Now, hopefully, we'll also be able to, we try to leverage the other grants as much as humanly possible also. So, but at this point, I had to move those into more general funds rather than specific grant funds.
One more question, I promise. I'll be finished here. Just got a chance to look at this later today. So for the revenues for property taxes for the debt service went up about 9%. Did we increase the rate higher because?
We did, because we issued those new bonds for working cash,
Okay,
and then we'll have to,
so
that
we
fund
increased
completely
that rate.
washes
Okay.
out anyway over time. We show a $5.7 million, ending fund balance, but that's just a timing thing, because we're getting all the money in the spring that we then pay out in the fall, so, I almost disregard that when I start looking at financials, because that can't be spent on anything other than bonds.
Exactly, the debt service. Okay,
So,
thank you.
we could close the school district and county would still levy those for those bonds and pay those bonds, whether we were here or not. So that's not what happened, but that's how it works. So, any other questions?
Any other questions or discussion on the budget?
Think of anything else, please just, get with me anytime. I can get details of numbers and, as you can see from the, we use about 5,000 account numbers here to split it all so we can do site-based accounting for the state and everything. So there's a lot of account numbers, but, and I must admit, I spend way more time than I would like to admit, like going over account by account sometimes, but.
I'd like to say, you made a comment. Did you have something were you raising your hand? Oh, okay. You made the comment about the answer's going to be no, and,
I just made a comment, what?
that when you told the principals that some of the answers are gonna be no.
Oh, yes.
And, I've been in that position. Nobody likes to have to be in that position. But I think that's probably something we have to start saying. Reoccurring costs are one thing. Building something out of savings is another thing. But with these reoccurring costs, we cannot continue to be 1 million, 2 million over budget. If our revenue is here and our expenditures are here, we all know over time, we're gonna go through our reserves. So, this board has been pretty vocal about asking to see where it is that we can be conservative. I know we approved some textbooks this year and, but there are gonna be times when people aren't gonna be happy about the no, and the salaries, that's a big issue. There are other things that we might have to say no to, and as a former superintendent, I know some of the things that you have to, that you can say no to. Again, I don't think it's the board's job to pick out what those are, but I think we're gonna rely heavily on our administration to make recommendations of what those things would be. Because because we just simply can't keep going and living above our means.
Yeah, I mean, people in the office could vouch, Dr. Dearman, Dr. Andrews could vouch that, and harping on that all spring and summer, that the answer going forward has to be, and we know we're not going to cut, whenever people start talking about things like this, they start talking about, well, what if we, cut some major program? Well, we're not gonna do that, we want to provide a high quality.
Well, we do want a high-quality education. We all want that, but we all know it in our own homes and our own budgets, we try not to overextend. There are some things we can't say no to, whether it's, professional conferences or associations or, a ban on travel for certain things. And we'll be looking to you guys for some creative
And I've been harping
solutions.
on that last week at the administrator meeting, I was harping on that with everybody, just so everybody was aware. I mean, it's certainly, one thing I didn't mention, in this budget, at some point we're gonna have solar panels on our buildings, and that's gonna help with our electricity costs, so that will help. I mean, there's things that we're working on to help the bottom line, and I make the budget kind of as where we are now, well, that might happen, but we're waiting on Amarin, so I don't know if it's gonna happen 2 months from now or a year and a half from now, so I can't really build that.
Well,
into
I
the
understand
budget.
that,
So
and
hopefully
you're
there'll
not,
be things that we find that we could do
Right.
this year, the long-term goal is to, we have to do something to.
I understand, and I'm not saying that it's just on your shoulders.
Yeah.
We have a superintendent that we hire to do those things too, and so, anyway.
With that being said, I just got this yesterday from the ECRA group, which is an independent third party that analyzes report card data. Instructional spending per pupil, in 2022, we were in the 10th percentile of the state. That's near the bottom. Last year, we were in the 5th percentile. So performance, as far as instructional spending per pupil, we're in the 5th percentile. So we're not spending lavishly expenditure per pupil on that. And then on the operational spending per pupil, we were in the 7th percentile in 2022. We're in the 4th percentile last year. So we are running, as I've said, I've got data to verify that it's a very lean ship, and we've received accolades. And I would even argue that 4%, the 4th percentile ranking is probably not accurate, because I look at some of the comparison groups and they're comparing us to some elementary districts, which are always cheaper than a unit district. That's not really a fair comparison. So I would say of the unit district, we might be the lowest as far as operating expense per pupil. So we are super, super efficient. Teresa's right though. I mean, it's common sense. We're spending more than we're bringing in. Now, I've been hearing this since like Groundhog Day for 7 years now. That, we're losing money and we've got concerns, and they're very valid. And I'm talking about some years when we had declining EAPs, and there were real concerns. And not much has changed in that time. One thing that we know changes is the economy and things associated with that. If you would have asked me last year, when we got the property tax bills, I live in town, 8% increase. I thought those days were long gone. I thought those were back in the days of exponential growth at Dunlap, and I was hoping for maybe 3-4%. That has certainly changed. As Mike stated, evidence-based funding is up. Our EAP base is up. We have some things that are trending in the right direction. But Teresa's right. We cannot continue down this path long term. However, even with the expenditure of $8.5 million for a training center, we still have 300 days cash on hand. We only need 160 to get the 4.0 rating on our financial profile score. So the sky is not falling. We are in the people business. So if we want to make cuts to substantially hit this bottom line, it's going to come in the form of people. And I just don't think we're there yet. I think we need to give this some time. As I stated to all of you when I met with you individually four months ago, last year we were positive, but let's be real. Why were we positive? We issued those working cash fund bonds, and we got an extra basically $1 million up front, and now we're backloaded and paying for that. That's why we're short. So of that $2 million he's proposing, we're negative. $1 million, that's because we got it last year, which offset the difference. So we're really looking at $1,700,000 or so deficit. And I think we can balance those. If Mike's doing his job, I get it. We overestimate expenditures, we underestimate revenue. I'm optimistic we'll be close to balance. I'm okay with that. And when you have $28, $30 million in reserves, let's ride that out for a while and see what happens. But if things don't change, and we don't see some positive revenue change, Teresa's right, it's not sustainable.
What is the, can I ask a question?
Sure.
That acronym or that, where did you get that data on that 4% and 7% in terms of operating
From
costs?
Eckra Group, oh, you know,
What is it called?
Eckra,
Spell it.
ECRA, don't ask me what the acronym stands for.
And is that, you said there's a, whatever, some sort of cohort that you're able to measure against, but are you able to, is that just your discrete data, or can you query for other
You can get
districts?
on the state report card site and you can run this comparison yourself. You can select comparison.
Yeah, well, I don't wanna do anything myself, doctor, I'm just asking if you're able to get
Yeah, we
information
can
off
get
that.
comparative school districts and, for both operating expenditures and, instructional expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll put
This is a snippet of it. Here's some of the, ones that they were comparing us to. I know that's hard to read, but, like Central School District 51, that's an elementary district. I know that my wife works in. But then County Woodruff, that's Metamora High School. Germantown Gray, Indian Prairie, now that's a CUSD, that's a unit. Mahomet Seymour's a unit. We got Metamora Grade School. We do have Morton on here. We got Washington High School. And then another Washington Grade School District. And again, I didn't pull these were pulled by ECRA and given to me, but it illustrates the point.
Do you have a program in mind that will do forecasting out, that we can see maybe 5 years out, what a potential, I know we've done that in the past, Dr. Dearman? And I know that's very difficult to do sometimes, but that's something where that you can update that as we know more. I guess my concern, I completely understand what you're saying there, I know that, but what we're seeing now is we're seeing our expenditures grow quicker than what our revenues grow now, and you would agree with that, correct? We saw an 8% increase in our property taxes, and if we're here at $2 million based on that, where are we gonna be then if we come in at 3% for property tax and the EAV increase, but yet our expenditures continue to rise at what they're rising at, let's say 5% a year? I'm concerned, I wanna see what that's gonna look like, because I know you say we still have 160 days on hand, whatever it might be. It doesn't take long when you're looking at $3 to $5 million, if it's that, maybe it's $2 to $3 million a year. It doesn't take long to bring that down. We need to focus on that and have a little bit more.
Yeah, I think I shared that when I met with each person individually. If things don't change, my guess, the rubber will be the road 6 to 7 years.
Right, exactly, and I don't think I'll be sitting here in this spot, but I do not want the next folks to say, what did they leave me? I wanna make sure that we're in a good position moving forward, not just, we need to give the best education to our students, but also for the stakeholders and the district itself.
Yeah, we don't really have a program that does that. We used to use a program when I first started, but it's fairly expensive, like $12,000 a year kind of thing, so it's one of the things I touched. It used to be called Forecast 5, but, they do a lot of that kind of stuff, but to me, it's more expensive than it's worth. But we can do, I informally do a lot of that kind of stuff when I'm setting up the budget.
Right.
I don't usually create formal reports about it, but we can do that, so.
And can we adjust, when you do the budget, we see these financials and we'll see the budget. Can we, moving forward, maybe adjust that to where you think we're going to be, right? So every quarter, say, this is where we're at, we're seeing this. So, because, like you said, this year we came out positive and we thought we were going to be in a deficit. And I know there was a transfer made during that time, but so we're closer, so we know every month where we think we're going to land. Does that make sense?
Yep. And one thing I didn't, he talked about a little bit, but, this year we're budgeting, we can do that. I'll think about how to report it and everything.
Okay.
We'll definitely do that, but, another positive we'll see here in a year is the fact that we're gonna start levying back for, IRS Social Security. Right now, we're showing a $1.3 million deficit in that fund, but again, we're trying to spend down that fund, because there's more money in that fund than needs to be. So we purposely didn't levy last year for it, we're not gonna levy, I think we're not gonna levy this coming year either. But then after that, we'll start levying for it again, and that will go, so I mean, some of this is just a little bit of things you have to do in school districts to move money around, and to spend it down, you have to, you have to have a deficit in the budget for that to spend that funds. You can't just transfer, some funds you cannot transfer money out. I know, so screwed as well, because you levy it for that purpose and that purpose only, and you cannot move it, and so, that will change, probably, a couple of years too, so.
Right.
We'll get that report.
Yeah, but I'll work on that.
Are there any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. The board policy updates are from press. There, and the update 115, they're included in the board packet. I looked over these pretty thoroughly, as did Dr. Dearman. So if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to say anything at this time. If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Is there a second?
Second.
I did have one question. That's got the facility agreement in it. When you rent facilities, who does that, but, so you rent the football field, does that include running the lights? Or the baseball field, does that turn the lights on, or is that a separate charge when they run the lights?
It's inclusive of that,
It includes the lights, whether they use them or not?
yes.
Okay.
He asked, when there's a rental of a baseball field, and they use the lights, do they pay a separate charge? No.
The football field would be more significant. When you- I would just like to see a differential. If they're gonna have the lights on a football field, they need to pay more. If they don't come on the
Have we
Sunday,
ever rented out the football field?
maybe they don't. Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna charge our feeder programs. The only time I can think it was ever rented out was, when Farmington used it for a football playoff game 7 years ago because of the rain, and they paid us for it.
Okay, that motion carried. We have, I'm sorry, okay, roll call vote.
Feldman.
Aye.
Sorry, let me
Pretty
finish.
slick, I mean, that's the way to get it done.
Aye.
Tyra.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Okay, motion carried at 6:42. Board will now move on to action items. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. May I please have a motion to approve payment of the bills?
I move to approve the payment of bills in the amount of $4,177,295.34 as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Tyra.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
We do. Okay, motion carried. May I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the Open Meetings Act: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, discussions of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, collective negotiating matters, security procedures, purchase or lease of real property and litigation, and the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in the Open Meetings Act, including a vacancy in a public office. 5 ILCS 122C3.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Wisdom? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Time is 6:44 PM. We'll be back shortly. I don't don't know. Do we need any of the administrators, the principals, or Mr. Andrews enclosed? I don't believe so. I think just Dr. Dearman? Yeah. Okay. Everybody else is free to go.
Mike just asked.
Drop my notes.
We have his oath of office in here. May I please have a motion to return to open session? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried, and the time is 7:24 PM. May I have a motion to approve the human resource consent agenda?
I move to approve the human resources consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Holzhauser. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Wisdom, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Tyra. Wagner.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humble.
Motion carried. May I please have a motion to approve the agreed-upon candidate to fill the school board member vacancy?
Yeah, I will move to approve Steve Hodel to fill the school board member vacancy.
Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. Any discussion?
I would like to say one thing, actually, if you don't mind. All due respect to Steve, I've known you sorry, I'm out of breath, I was running back from the bathroom. I've known you for what, 15, 20 years? Great guy, great family and everything else. I just want to say that as a board member, I feel that it's our job to listen to our constituents and be a voice of the voters. And I believe there was a candidate that ran a strong campaign last election that I was in, finished just narrowly behind myself in the vacated seat. I just want the record to show that I feel like we should listen to the voice of the voters. And maybe it's something that we can address down the road, but I feel that that person deserved an opportunity, and more importantly, our constituents. And voters' voices need to be heard for that open seat versus just a 20-minute, 25-minute interview session. But again, no disrespect. Our district, we have 3 great candidates, and so I would encourage all 3 of them to run next election because I feel like 3 strong people, very impressive. But I just wanted to put that on record. Again, Steve, I know you well, and I know you're going to do a great job, but that's all I have to say.
Roll call vote.
Feldman.
Aye.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humble.
Aye.
Tyra.
No.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Motion carried. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Hodel to come forward to the podium, and you're going to have to recite the oath of office. Is there one up there for him?
Yes.
Okay.
I also put one on the back of the agenda.
It's on the back of this form.
Okay.
I, Stephen Hodel, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of Dunlap School District in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board, while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting, and I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
Thank you, Mr. Hodel. At this time, I'd like to ask you to please come and take a seat at the table. Well, the meeting has been called to order. We'd like to ask that roll be called.
Feldman.
Here.
Holzhauser. Here. Humble.
Here.
Hodel.
Here.
Tyra.
Here.
Wagenbach.
Here.
Wisdom.
Here.
thank you very much. I'd like to take a moment to inform the newly elected board member that you're required to comply with the Abused and Neglected Child Reporting Act that is stated in Board Policy 2.20, and you'll learn, other things that are required. There's some online modules that you'll need to complete by a certain time, and you can work with Miranda to help you figure out how to get that done. And then you also have to see Mrs. Bolar at the end of this meeting for the acknowledgement of the mandated reporter status form here for their district records. Would you like to make your first motion and motion to adjourn the meeting?
Sure, how do I do that?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Tyra. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried, 7:30. So we say aye and nay for those things that don't require money.